It looks like this week is a week full of previews, as not only did we get the first few chapters of Before the Dawn a few days ago, but just yesterday we got the first full fairy tale from the Fairy Tales of Remnant book that is slated for release later this year in September. This book is structured as a collection of stories gathered by Ozpin throughout his many journeys across Remnant, and likely over the course of his many lifetimes. He gathered all these stories in an effort to pass on the lessons that are contained within them, and he built an entire course around this novel at Beacon Academy, so that no matter where a student comes from, what kingdom they hail, or from what walks of life they have experienced, there is always something that they can take away from these stories, the lessons that can be learned, and hopefully that can be carried on throughout their journeys as huntsmen in the future, so that these students can learn to listen to the stories of others and share stories of their own, so that everyone listening can learn from both of them. And certainly the first fairy tale in this book, titled The Warrior in the Woods, has some of these lessons contained within it. This tale follows a village that is thought to be a safe haven from the Grimm, with no fear of them attacking. The Grimm haven't plagued this place for many years, so much so that the children who have been born into this village don't even know what the Grimm look like outside of books. They've never experienced the fear of Grimm or have seen their terrifying presence. But with this complacency also comes a little bit of bravery, as the forest around this village is said to be what protects it from the Grimm. But children will be children and decide to go play in this forest. And one child in particular, in this game of hide and seek, decides to venture in far enough where no one would think to look for him. And upon being surrounded by this darkness, he isn't afraid. He's never had any reason to fear the dark before, so he decides to venture in a bit further. As the boy enters a clearing in the forest, he comes face to face with what he's only heard about in the books, a Grimm. And upon seeing the sharp, bony portions of its body, he is frozen in fear, able to do nothing as the Grimm charges him. But to his surprise, a warrior comes to his rescue. Wielding a battered bullhook, she is able to swiftly defeat the Grimm. And the boy notices that she is very beautiful, but also sees that her clothes are worn pretty thin, that the black cape that she's wearing is torn and tattered, and the bullhook that she's wielding is chipped and pretty worn out in and of itself. The woman looks at the boy, and all she has to say to him is to leave the forest now and to never return, also to never speak of seeing her there. The boy does listen to her, leaves the forest, goes back to the village, and says nothing of seeing the woman. But he does talk about the Grimm that he saw as a warning to everyone else in the village, some heeding the warning, others not believing it. And yet, a year later to the day, the boy does venture into the woods, again looking for this woman. This time, he does make it further into the forest, past this clearing, but he feels the chill on the back of his neck, and as he turns around, he comes face to face with another Grimm. He pulls out the dagger that he brought to defend himself, realizing that he may as well have been unarmed. The Grimm is still too powerful and would have dealt with him the same either way. But just as he'd hoped, the warrior comes to his rescue yet again, asking him why he had returned, that he's a slow learner, doesn't realize the dangers of the forest, but the boy had come to thank her, and brought her clothes. Knowing that the clothes she was wearing were torn and tattered, he brought some of his mother's old clothes to give her. This does seem to bring a bit of cheer to the warrior's demeanor, but she still tells the boy to leave and to never return. And the boy does leave, but again, 1 year later, he does come back. This time, though, a young man. He has forged his own sword under the careful eye of the blacksmith of the town. This time he is ready to defend himself, as the woman had told him that she would not save him again. And so the boy ventures into the forest, able to make it even further this time. But this time encounters 3 black Grimm owls, and is determined to fight them, determined to make his way through the forest. And it is a long and brutal battle. This boy isn't accustomed to fighting. He is able to defeat 2 of the owls, but by this point he's exhausted, and as the 3rd owl is attacking, he doesn't have the strength to defend himself anymore. All of a sudden there's a blinding light, and once he regains his awareness of the surroundings, the Grimm is gone and the warrior is standing before him, asking him yet again, "Why have you returned?" And again the boy responds, "I've come to thank you." This time, instead of bringing clothes, though, he brought a bunch of food. The woman saying she already has food, but this food is not something she's had for a very long time. Shortcake and cookies, and the cookies in particular bring a smile to the warrior's face, something that greatly pleases the boy. The woman exclaims that, "Why have you come back? Are you in love with me or something?" And this makes the boy blush a little bit, but still the warrior tells him to be on his way and never to return. But even though the boy does leave, 1 year later he comes back again. This time more experienced and ready to fight off the Grimm. But to his surprise, as he's venturing into the forest, he doesn't encounter any, and is able to make it to the center, where he finds a hut and the warrior herself sitting outside next to a table with 2 cups of hot tea, waiting for him. And this time the boy, the man I should say, as he's grown up quite a bit by this point, is able to sit down and have a conversation with her. This time, though, he didn't bring her food or clothes. He brought her a brand new weapon. As the woman exclaims, he came over-prepared, having a freshly forged sword and a brand new bullhook, this one for the warrior, which she seems quite pleased with. The man is able to ask the warrior something. Why? Why are you protecting the village? Why are you out here alone? Why are you doing so much for people that you don't even know? And the woman responds, saying she's been alone for a long time. Her people were killed long ago, all of her friends and family, and any survivors were scattered across Remnant. They weren't killed by Grimm, but by other humans. She protects everyone because she can, because no one else will. It is something that she can do, and she feels that she should do. And with that, she's quite pleased with the new bullhook, but tells the boy yet again to leave the forest and never to return, but both of them realizing that 1 year later he certainly will. But as the stories of the village being a safe haven grew, the village lured more people in and started to grow, encroaching on the forest itself. And as the villagers started to chop down trees and expand the village into the forest, so too returned the Grimm. And the Grimm attacks became more ferocious and frequent, and it was difficult to survive in this village. So when the day came where the boy was set to return, he fought his way tooth and nail through this forest, defeating horde after horde of Grimm, just to make it all the way to the hut. But what he found there was that the door was torn apart, the inside of the hut was wrecked, and outside, just perched, leaning up the door as if the warrior had just gone out for a stroll, was that brand new bullhook that he had made for her. He never learned what happened to the warrior, but he shoulders the bullhook that he had made for the warrior and fights his way back to the village, knowing that their time is limited, that soon enough the Grimm attacks will become so much that the village will be forced to move. But until that time, he will fight, because he can, because no one else will. And so he decides to share the story of this warrior who had protected the village for so long, so that people would know who to give their appreciation to, and so that this woman would be remembered. Because if she died alone. And as he's telling her story, someone asks him, "Why did you go back so many times, year after year? Was it because she saved you?" And the man responds, "For that and many other reasons, but likely she knew the deepest reason of all. I fell in love with her the moment that I saw her silver eyes." And this is where this fairy tale ends, and it is such a touching one. If this is what all of the fairy tales in this book are going to be like, I'm looking forward to it so much. That last line, "I fell in love with her the moment I saw her silver eyes," just, it cuts so deep. And this silver-eyed warrior, I have a feeling we may have seen this one before, because we are given a depiction of the warrior, and although the hair color seems slightly different, this could be the daughter of one of Ozpin's previous incarnations that we saw in the Lost Fable, because he did have 2 children that were silver-eyed, one of them being a girl, and we know that a Grimm did attack the village at that point. Yes, his reincarnation lived past that point to an elder age where he worked on the long memory, the cane that Oscar is now wielding, but this could be the girl. There might have been a Grimm attack that separated all of her family, or maybe she moved away at some point because humans had attacked her and her family and the others like her, other silver-eyed warriors. This was the work of Salem, no doubt, that the silver-eyed warriors were being hunted, but silver-eyed warriors themselves are protectors, are warriors, people who will fight for humanity, fight on the side of good. And this fairy tale has quite a few lessons in it on top of that. My lesson always that you shouldn't stray too far from home or rely too much on the help of others. Because the boy, as he ventured out the first couple times, he knew he wasn't really able to defend himself, but yeah, he still kind of relied on the warrior to save his ass. If she wasn't there and wasn't waiting for him, he would have been in real big trouble. But the main takeaway of this story is that if you have the powers to help others, you have a responsibility to do so. Whether it's fighting evil or even just baking cookies, as sometimes kindness is as rare as silver eyes themselves, you have an obligation to do so. This is such a touching story, and I would love to know your thoughts in the comments below as to what you're looking forward to in these fairy tales. There are quite a few interesting names on this list that I'm really looking forward to, and I'm going to cover all of them when this book releases in September, so hopefully you guys will look forward to that as well. But let me know what you thought about the warrior in the woods, this silver-eyed warrior who fought all on her own to protect this village, keeping it safe from hordes of Grimm day after day, not wanting any thanks in return. This is such a touching story, and I am going to love this book and all of these stories so much. I'm really looking forward to it, and I would love to know your thoughts. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, this little preview of the Fairy Tales of Remnant, and if you did, make sure to subscribe, join the Guild of the Eternal Flame, tweet me at PhoenixKnight7, join our Discord server, and I'll see you guys in the next video.